Hello, hello.
Hooty hoops!
Hey, everybody. It's the Hoops Talk coming at you again for this Wednesday afternoon.
Live from Corona.
Right? I know. I'm just going to say it. I'm the elephant in the room. Kendall is not on this episode. Oh, so sad. But not to worry. She didn't leave us.
No Rona.
No Rona. She actually still has her wisdom teeth. So
I love how she had to tell us her age and say, yes, I still have my wisdom teeth.
So she still has her wisdom teeth, and apparently they're like ready to pop out, and she's gonna get them pulled. And yeah, I have a feeling when she's not gonna be in maybe the next episode either. We'll see how well it goes, because I know I was out for a week when I got my wisdom teeth pulled.
It's just not a joke.
I mean, and besides, if you could take a week off and just be on like heavy narcotics
Ooh.
and eat ice cream,
That's vacation.
right? Actually, that wasn't surgery. That was last Friday.
And then Wednesday, and then the following Thursday.
3-day weekends just like end up multiplying with that kind of combination. Yeah, so she's not here, but you know what? This is like back in the OG days.
Oh shit! In like our closets / fake kitchens.
Well, you have the parasite kitchen. I was able to call it when I saw it.
Yes,
so
very good.
Kudos on me. Cinephile right here.
Cinephile.
And I'm doing more of this like curated plant life situation background. So
super LA.
That's what I'm doing. I love my plant babies. So yeah, so I had some of them come and sit in our audience.
3 of them.
Yeah, a few of them are
on the YouTube premiere on Wednesday.
Right? They'll be there. The background in our audience. Well, how is San Francisco? How's it doing? Has it still like a heat wave?
Yeah, hot. As you can see, I'm still sweating. Mm-hmm. It's been hot. It's been chill. A few, I think today they announced that for SF they could start doing outdoor seating for restaurants.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, we hanging in there. We'll see what happens. How's LA? How's
You know, it's pretty mild here as far as weather-wise, and
I heard they opened up salons and stuff, or started to.
The beauty salons, like hair to get your hair cut, but I don't think they've done nails, or I haven't heard of anything like that, or massages or anything. But you know what? They're trying to reopen, trying to do it safely. You know, we'll see. We'll continue our precautions, but I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's like chicken before the egg.
Well, someone on Twitter was like, I went to go talk to like a biochemist or some scientist people.
Okay.
Who are looking at the numbers for Corona. And he was like, so you guys going to do outdoor seating for restaurants? And they're like, in 2021, spring. I was like, oop.
Oh, man.
Maybe not.
Seriously. Well, let's all still be careful, wash our hands, wear a mask, don't touch face, all that good stuff, and just be safe out there. But I'm glad that, you know, we still have some pretty decent weather, and hopefully, I mean, they opened the pool in my apartment complex, but
Lucky?
No. I read the protocol for it. I think there would be like up to 6 people. You have to sign in. You have a 2-hour limit. And then they come and wipe everything down every 3 hours. And I'm like, is it even really worth it to have the pool open? But you know what? I guess. However, good luck. I'm like terrified to go to our mail room. I'm like,
oh, right. I'm like, gloves, mask. Don't touch me.
But who knows? I guess it doesn't go through water. You know what? I'm not a scientist. I don't want to have misinformation come out of my mouth.
I mean, it's chlorine. I mean, that kills everything. Your hair.
You know what? No misinformation on this podcast. Just listen to your local. Like I always said, do not listen to us. We are not like doctors.
We're not Trump's PR secretary. You know
exactly. No, we're no affiliation. So just be careful. Just be safe. Listen to your protocols. With that, I'm going to do a little bit of house cleaning and some updates as we normally do. Let's see. We ask you to please subscribe, like, and review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Also, download the Good News Radio app, where there are our podcast premieres live on the app. So if you get it and you listen to us on at 6:30, you'll get a push notification. Same goes with our YouTube channel, where you can see our faces and our background and our guests. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun. We chat. We were chatting the other day in there with some peeps watching it live with us as we were like reliving the moments with Ari, who was our guest last week. So hit that up. And then we're also on Twitter and on Instagram at the Hoops Talking. And we have a TikTok page is run by our intern at the Hoops Talk podcast. So that's all my updates. That's all my house cleaning. And I think we're ready to we have a guest. We're doing a little, we've been having a lot of Women Crush Wednesday, but we're going to switch things up and we're going to get someone who is not necessarily a woman, but he has had a lot of his basketball love come from the women's basketball game. So we're going to have him on right after this. Whoop, whoop. Hi, Antonio. How's it going?
Hey,
Hi, how are you? Hi, Karen. Hi, Liz.
we're
we're
good.
doing
We're excited.
very excited, very excited. Thank you, Antonio, for joining us on the Hoops Talk. So I want to give our audience a quick background and, if I get anything wrong, please feel free to jump in. So Antonio, you are a sports analyst, journalist, a speaker, and a former NBA scout with the Phoenix Sun. You have over 15 years of experience, and you currently host a show called The Sports Connect, which is a digital media show where you discuss sports analysis and insights with a variety of sports talent and experts. Did I get that? Did I nail it?
You did. You did. You did. You did a great job. Thank you.
And I know you and I had talked prior to recording, and I learned so many enriching things that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to try to keep us like on focus, but you're just someone who, in my opinion, your experience and your just your overall knowledge is just there's so much that you can offer and talk to us about. And I
Mhm.
know one of the things we were kind of talking about before we started was what is happening in the world today with the protests, with sparked by the murder of George Floyd, with all the pandemic also, because and all of that. So I know you're currently in Dallas.
Yes.
So maybe you can touch upon that quickly and how that's affecting you, how you're seeing it affect the sports world, and maybe even how it's kind of affected how you're proceeding in your own for your own show.
So one of the things, again, I appreciate you all sharing your
Oh,
platform with me. Thank you so much. So I appreciate this opportunity. One of the things that this sort of the pandemic really
mm,
started for me is it's been ironic. For me, it's as the world has started to shelter and come in,
mm,
I've started to emerge a little bit.
wow,
And I mean that in the most respectful way
sure.
possible. I don't mean that in a conceited way.
Mm,
So, for the longest time, my wife has been telling me that I need to go back into sports media and talking about some of my experiences
mm,
and leveraging those experiences, my relationships, etc., to offer my perspective and maybe it can help people. And oftentimes, one of the things that I really wanted to do in sports is really be a voice of help, a voice of change. And so this time has actually started for me. It's really made me emerge and sort of come out of my shell.
I love
And
it.
and and
That's
part
nice.
of that is when I was working at ESPN in 2008, it was my job to sort of
Mm,
have a public presence.
mm,
And then when I went to Nike, when we were negotiating deals with
mm,
uh, basketball players and negotiating deals with high level basketball programs in college, that sort of lends itself to be very secretive. And
mm,
and the same thing when I worked for the Suns in the NBA, who were drafting, who were signing. who we may release, who we may trade.
Mhm.
All of those different things are really secretive. And
Mm.
oftentimes, when you put that perspective out in the public, you could actually be running some misdirection
Mm.
to
Sure.
sort of trip up your the opposing teams as you're thinking about your personnel. So it really lends itself to being very secretive. And the other thing as well, when you work in the NBA as a scout, sometimes when I was at ESPN and even when I was at Nike, that mentorship, that ability to help families and help players with information that I may
Mm.
have come by as a scout,
Sure.
as someone that worked in the league, worked in the media, etc. All of those things I would like to sort of pass on to
Mm.
the families as they're going through this process, because you all know this process is just crazy. And
Yes.
if you really haven't had any experience in it, there's no way to know what's coming around the corner.
True.
And, it doesn't start just when you are a professional on the cusp of becoming a professional. That starts when you are a high level athlete and you're picking a
Mm.
college.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
because there's all sorts of things out there and all sorts of things that the players, women and men, need to consider when they are picking a college, if they're good enough
Right.
to play on that professional level. And even if they're not, actually, one of the things I like to say is you need to put yourself in a position to, when a school is recruiting you and you're able to leverage your talent to pay for school,
Yeah.
you need to be in a position from an academic standpoint as well to make a business decision.
Sure.
and and oftentimes when people are picking schools, they don't make business decisions. It's
Right.
all about, I grew up rooting for this team my entire life. Well,
Sure.
that may not be a reason that you should choose that school.
Right.
So being able to offer that information and being a conduit for some of the players as they're going through the process is something that I really miss. And
Right.
being in this capacity is something that you can really do that again. You don't have
Sure.
any restrictions in terms of who you talk to, what gyms you're in, etc.
Sure. It's funny because one of the points that you made when we spoke a couple weeks ago was that you mentioned that pro players are trained to figure things out for themselves on the court, right? And how to make the next move and problem solve and score, et cetera, is all something they train for when they're playing. But off
Hmm.
the court, they're lacking the ability to understand how and when to ask for help, mental health, careers, what's life after sports. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it pertains to your experience, and maybe even how your thoughts on transparency and what's happening in the world today, what's emerging in the world today? How can you express a little bit more on that?
But for sure, one of the things I know for me as a player, and we are talking about basketball here
Sure.
specifically,
Mm-hmm.
in college, basketball is a 2 semester sport. So, especially if your team is really good, you play in the beginning of April.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you will start in October. That's the first official day of practice.
And
So
this
it
is just,
almost,
sorry, not to interrupt, but this is also men's basketball,
yes, yes.
men's
Actually,
college.
well, both,
Oh,
both.
okay,
You
okay,
start, yes,
okay.
you'll start in women's college basketball. That first official day of practice in college is the same for everybody.
Got it.
So, so when you play college basketball, you are sacrificing a lot.
Mm,
And one of the things that we go to college to do is to prepare us for whatever career that we decide that we want to embark on once we're finished playing, if you're not good enough to be a professional,
got
or if
it.
you choose to not be a professional.
Got it.
So, with that being said, when you go to college, one of the things that you're doing is you're building relationships, you're getting internships.
Mm, got
And
it.
when you
Mhm.
are a college athlete and you play basketball, you oftentimes give up that opportunity to get internships. And
Mm,
if you're not really diligent about it, the only time that you can really do it is in the summer. And
mm,
now we are turning college basketball into a year round experience now,
got it.
because a lot of the players go to school for the summers because the NCAA has allowed a couple of hours a week of actual on the court training with
Mhm.
your coaches. And then you also have strength and conditioning that goes on as well during the summer. So we're turning this into a year round endeavor.
Got
And
it.
when you do that, you give up a lot of those things that the quote unquote average college student has access to. studying abroad. It's all of those different things you give up.
Mm,
And those are experiences that enrich you for your career when you're done playing basketball, whether that's after you graduate from college, whether you play a few years professionally, or
mhm,
whether you play 20 years professionally.
mm,
And so oftentimes as well, one of the things that you alluded to, Liz, was that ability to problem solve that athletes have.
yeah,
So because of our competitive nature, and again, going back into college, when we get into corporate America loves athletes
sure.
because we can persevere, we can multitask, we
Mm,
are team players.
yep.
We learn to sometimes, especially when you get to college, you sometimes may be on a team that you may not be best friends with everyone on the team,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
So you still have to be effective and you still have to do your job and pull your weight, and you all have to connect to accomplish various tasks. And you have to do that regardless of how you feel about the people that are on your
sure.
team. So those are aspects that you bring to the corporate world.
Mhm,
And with our competitive nature as athletes as well, we are always figuring things out on our own. And
mhm,
then when you get to that professional level, sometimes because you have that ability to figure things out on your own, coupled with your financial power and impact, you become the problem solver for your family and your friends as
yeah,
well. So with you having all of these abilities to you're sometimes you're looked at as superhuman,
mm,
and you have all of these abilities to figure things out on your own, we sometimes lack the ability to know how to ask for help.
mm,
I
And
see that.
so
Yep.
and oftentimes we not only do we lack the ability to ask for help, we can't oftentimes ascertain when we actually need to ask for help
right.
because we're so programmed to figure it out, figure it out, figure it out. When we're playing in games, yes, there are great coaches on the women's side and the men's side. My wife actually played for one of the great coaches, Barbara Stevens, who is being
Oh,
inducted in the
Nice.
2021 because they
yeah,
moved it because
right.
of COVID-19. But she is being inducted in the Hall of Fame along with Kim Mulkey, the
Mm,
great Kobe Bryant, Tamika Catchings, Tim
yep,
Duncan, Kevin Garnett, etc. So we play for these coaches are incredible. We play for these coaches, and yet we lack the ability to figure things out on our own
mm,
in terms of asking for help.
mm,
And we're very severely underdeveloped in that realm oftentimes.
right.
And you hear that when people say that athletes are their competitive nature, they're wired incredibly for their respective sports, but they may be wired poorly for life.
Right,
So after that sport, now real life comes.
right.
And I can talk for me after I finished playing, and I finished playing. My first job was in the NBA in the league office. I'm around basketball every day,
Mm,
and I'm working in basketball. I actually was in working primarily in WNBA basketball operations.
mhm,
Um, so as I was doing that, I'm around the sport every single day, and I love what I'm doing. And as I love what I'm doing, I'm playing in an urban professionals league in New York. So there are a lot of people like me that played that
okay,
are now playing in the league.
right.
And I say that because there was a sense of loss there for me as well.
Mm, okay,
Yeah.
Because once that competitive juice is sort of turned off, and the
right.
mechanism where you can exercise that competitive juice, once that's turned off, now you have to find what are you going to do. And I went through a period where I was not myself.
Okay.
And from a mental health standpoint, I'm so glad that we're talking about that.
Mm,
But I went through a period where it was, here it is, I'm living in New York City, I'm working around basketball every single day, and I don't feel like myself
wow.
because
It's
you
crazy. Yeah.
don't. Yeah, it's just
Because
it's
you're
it's
not on the
it's really
court, you're not on the
right.
field, you know?
Yeah,
Exactly. And playing in the urban professionals league is different.
sure.
That's different because as an athlete, one of the reasons why, again, mental health, one of the reasons why athletes sort of quote unquote hold on too long
Mhm,
was, and I don't mean this in a way where I'm passing judgment on anyone,
mm, mhm,
but I didn't have a vice except competition. That
mm,
was my vice,
Yes, yeah. It
right?
is.
And so you get addicted to that feeling of when you're on the road and you make an incredible shot and you
Mm,
pan the crowd and you basically take the collective air of the building out,
yeah,
you take it out of them.
yeah,
And I got addicted to that.
sure.
That
And
makes sense.
now
Yeah.
when I go and compete in the Urban Professionals League, there's nobody there, right? And
Well, I mean, that actually brings up a really good point because now I know we want to talk about this later because there's some stuff developing on the proposals to start the season. But one of the things that the players are going to have to deal with is not having fans in the stadium. How
Oh,
do
six
you
man.
think
Yeah.
how is that going to work? I mean, you just told the great story about how that did for you as an individual. Now think about a LeBron not getting a clap or Giannis not getting that rush for those great plays.
mhm,
What do you think is going to happen? Do you really think the players are going to be able to play at a certain level, or are they just gonna at one point be like, you know what, I don't care, put out the backups, the reserves, I don't want to play?
right,
Or what are your
right.
thoughts on that? I
Well,
mean, because
I
I'm
certainly.
sorry, because realistically they say, oh, first LeBron was like, I need to have fans, and then he's like, I'm on a no, we don't care, and like so they go back and forth, and I'm not sure what's real. So maybe you can tell us what's more real.
Well, as a player, it will certainly take some getting used to, because again, you get used to that, especially when you are LeBron or Giannis
Mm,
or Kawhi. When you become the attraction yourself,
sure,
and so you're almost like a traveling rock band. You're just playing. It's just wrapped in basketball.
sure.
So when you're that level of player, it's a packed house every night, whether
Hmm.
you're playing your 41 games at the Staples Center, or I guess with the Lakers and Clippers, that's probably
Yeah,
43. So so you're playing your 43 regular season
sure,
games at the Staples Center,
right.
and you're playing your other 40 on the road. And so, with that being said, or your other 39 on the
Mm,
road. So it is always a packed house for those players.
sure,
And Giannis, 41 at home, 41 away. It's always a packed house.
got it.
And so, with that being said, it will certainly take some getting used to for them.
Mm,
Now, some of the other teams where the crowds may be a little more sparse, maybe it's a different experience for them.
okay.
But for that high level player that's always used to playing in a
Mm,
packed house, and whether that crowd is against them or
right.
for them, it will be an adjustment. And sometimes, as a player too, when you play on the WNBA or the NBA
Mm,
level, even in the WNBA, even if they play a regular season, 36 regular season games,
mm,
well, they're also playing in Europe as well. So I say
mm,
that for a reason. They're playing year round, and the NBA players are virtually playing year round as well.
mm,
So, with that being said, when you play that amount of games, it is a grind physically.
sure.
It's a
Yeah.
grind. And sometimes you need a lift. And part of
Got
that
it.
lift is the crowd,
Sure.
whether you're at home, whether you're away.
Right.
The crowd gives you that lift. And now, when you don't have that,
Right.
you have to summon that on your own.
Whew.
Yeah.
and and sometimes that can be difficult. Now we're in a different situation
Hmm.
with the league being suspended for some months here,
Right.
and
Right.
we haven't even had a start for the W. So maybe
Right.
the players will be different, but it will be an adjustment for sure without the crowd. The other thing too, they will certainly have to pump in some sort of noise, because
Mm.
as we know, these players are competitive in the W and in the
Yeah.
NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So some things are said, right? And some things are said that I remember one time for me in particular, we were playing at a place that didn't have a basketball tradition. We're playing on the road,
Right.
and I was playing defense, and I ripped the guy clean. It just at half court, nobody was there, so there was no other players around. It was
Right.
really plain to see that this was a clean play.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I ripped this player, and a foul was called, and I grabbed the ball and ran to the other end of the floor, and I yelled out, "That's BS!" Right? And nobody was there, so
Yep.
of course I got the T,
Sure.
and so So those players that are used to that, again, in the and the NBA,
Yeah.
there are things that are said,
Right.
right, that the noise of the crowd sort of it drowns it out.
Sure.
And
Right.
now, so you want with kids watching,
Mm,
brands are watching as well. What you don't want or you don't want the players having to dial back their intensity
mm.
because they're worried about what they're going to say,
Wow.
because all of that is great theater. We love that as
Sure.
fans when we
Yeah,
watch
Oh
them
yeah.
go bantering back and forth.
Soap
totally.
opera
And
basketball. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
right, so they're going to have to come up with some sort of remedy, because again,
Mm.
you don't want these players playing and worrying about, okay, if I say this, will this affect my brand? And you don't want the league to have to worry about their branding because there's some things that are said. And so the players, it will be an adjustment.
Mm,
And yes, they're all competitive. Yes,
mm,
they want to be the best versions of themselves,
mm.
but you also don't want them to be guarded in what they say and how they compete either,
Right.
because that's great theater.
Wow, I never even thought about
Right.
that with that
The laugh
whole.
track they need to add.
Yeah, I
Right.
honestly, I
Right.
didn't. I
Right.
mean, I thought about it in the context of like how you mentioned when you need that extra push and the crowd's able to do that, but I never thought about it from the perspective of, things that could be said that could be detrimental to their brand or the NBA brand, because words and hands are caught in some of these games, and if they have to watch themselves for that, that could definitely change the style of play. That's so interesting. I never even thought about that, but I mean, that's why we got you on. You could tell us, give us an insider breakdown. And just as you mentioned the W as part of this conversation as well, because we know that
Yes.
they're proposing the season. Something that you and I had talked about a couple weeks ago also was that for you growing up, a big part of your socialization was basketball, and in particular, women's basketball, because
Yes.
you said you were mostly into football, between football and baseball, until the age of 10. You had an
Yes.
aunt that played basketball, and then you were what really got you were the USC women's basketball team, in particular those that were in the Women of Troy documentary:
Hmm.
Cheryl Miller, Cynthia Cooper, Paula and Pam McGee, Juliet Robinson, Rhonda Wynnum, and the USC head coach Linda Sharp. And
Yes.
really it was the women's game that got you into play. Can you tell us a little bit more about that whole, socialization part?
Yes, yes. Again, I was, like you said so eloquently, Liz, I was a football and baseball nut. And so that's what I was really concerned about, and did not like basketball at
Mm,
all. So it's so
mm,
ironic that I have this ongoing, never ending love affair with this sport. And because initially I did not like it, I didn't grow
mm,
up with a basketball in my hand. I grew
mm,
up with a football and a baseball in my
mm.
hand. And so, again, dating myself, this is in during the times when you had one or two TVs in the house, and
Okay.
Yeah.
seniority rules.
Yeah.
So when I was watching a football game, and my aunt, shout out to my auntie Yvette, who is a really good basketball player in her own right,
Nice.
when she wanted to watch basketball, that meant, okay, you got to watch
You gotta
basketball,
watch.
right?
Yeah, you gotta watch
I
ball.
have to watch it. Yeah, yeah. Seniority rules. So, so I started watching basketball, and of course, being in Southern California, by way of St. Louis, the women of Troy, Cheryl Miller, Cynthia Cooper, et cetera, all those great women that you named were part of not only my introduction and socialization into quote unquote women's basketball,
Mm,
that was my socialization and introduction to the sport of
That's so
mm.
cool.
basketball.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And so as I started to gain this love affair of basketball and watching the artistry that these women played with,
Mhm.
it influenced how I wanted to play,
Cool.
and just how great they were, how versatile they are. I mean, Cheryl Miller, in terms of being ahead of her time, what she did as a player that was a big that could also play out on the perimeter. And
Mm,
and it's so funny because Fred Williams was one of the assistant coaches on that team.
Mm.
He's now an assistant coach for the Sparks, and he's coaching Candace Parker. That's
Right.
Cheryl Miller's legacy.
Love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I love that.
right, so
Mm.
so all of those players, my wife was like that. My wife was a
Mm.
Division II All-American, and she was a four, but she could also go out on the perimeter. So
Got
that's
it.
Cheryl Miller's legacy.
Right.
And so again, there are many of, and I'm all about the empowerment of women,
Mm.
but my basketball fandom does, when I watch women play, and I hope that this isn't taking the wrong way, but when I watch women play, and I'm a big fan of the W, I'm a big fan of women's college basketball, that's not to support women. It's to
Mm.
see incredible people play basketball.
I
Right.
love that.
And
Yeah.
I
and
got
and,
it.
and I don't mean that to diminish women. That's
No,
Nope,
not
I
what I'm
no.
got it.
We
saying.
got it
Yeah, we
equally.
Right?
got
That's
it.
awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
All is
So
ball.
Got it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm watching incredible women play and marveling at their artistry.
Mm. Mhm.
And so yes, they were a big part of how I was introduced to the game,
Mm.
how I wanted to play, because this is before Michael Jordan, and I wore number 23. And this is before Michael Jordan coming into the league,
Yeah.
right? When they were doing their thing at
Yep.
USC, Michael Jordan was still at Carolina
Yep.
at the
Mhm.
beginning of it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so that was really my introduction into the game, and I love them, love them. And so one of the things that you talked about, Liz, and that we talked about is that meritocracy part.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that really stuck out to me when I watched it, because when I watched this and then I watched The Last Dance, I started thinking about I started thinking about the sorry
No, it's
the
okay.
the parallels between, and I have Do Not Disturb on, but
You're good.
um, I started thinking about the parallels between Michael Jordan and Cheryl Miller,
Mm.
Nice. Yeah.
Mm.
given the fact that it has to be crazy. It's got to be a crazy feeling that you are in the conversation for being the best to have ever competed in your
Mm.
respective sport, and you're not in control of how long you can play or if you can play.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Michael Jordan, All-Star Game MVP in 1998,
Mm.
wins the NBA title in 1998,
Mhm.
wins the Finals MVP in 1998.
Mm.
You won 6 titles in the 90s. You're not even in control of, do you get to continue, even though
Right.
your
That's so
talent
nuts.
says you should be able to do that. And
Yeah.
so then you have Cheryl Miller at 22 years old, and she is the best that I've ever seen,
Mhm.
and is probably the best to ever lace them up.
Mm.
And you're 22, you haven't even reached your prime,
Right.
and there's no league here for you to display your wares. That's
Nuts.
Yeah.
got to be
Yeah.
a crazy feeling.
For
It
sure.
it has to
Eh,
be. It has to
Yes,
be because I know, we've talked about, Kendall, she's a big fan of Amy Trask,
yes,
and, that's another person who's like, a lot of you'll find in these greats, they say, "I wasn't really thinking about it, I just knew that I had to do what I had to do."
Yep.
And
right,
when you have someone like Cheryl Miller who's like, I just do what I know I have to do because it's within me," and then they put a big stop sign because there's
right.
nothing for her to go past. It's like, wow,
It is
you
so
know,
crazy.
that's
It's
like,
so crazy.
it has to be like not just mental, but also a physical just manifestation of your end, I'd
For
assume.
sure, for sure. And then the other thing too, if you even think about it from a selfish standpoint,
Mm.
if people were really concerned about branding, here you are in Los Angeles, California.
Mm-hmm.
You have these women that are incredible players,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
they also have, and I don't mean this to marginalize them at all,
Mm.
but they also have, from an aesthetic standpoint, you
Oh
can
yeah.
brand them,
Oh
Oh
yeah.
right?
yeah.
We talk about
Right?
that about the W
So
all the time. There's
yes,
so
Yeah,
many
yes,
opportunities there.
yes,
totally.
yes, you can brand them. And again, I'm being respectful as possible,
Oh,
right?
you're good.
But so, but you can brand them as well. That
Mm.
was a huge miss,
Oh,
a
absolutely.
huge miss.
Absolutely.
And then the Olympics are now coming to LA. That is a huge
It's
miss.
huge.
Yes,
It's
yes.
huge. I
And
find
so
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Liz.
I was just gonna say, I do find it interesting how much money is left on the table, and these people are supposed to be like financial gurus and looking over
Yeah.
the
Right.
business and
Mhm.
CEOs, and they have all these degrees and diplomas on the wall, and yet they leave money on the table so many times because of their lack of perspective, or they're blindsided by not having those different perspectives in the room. And I think
Right.
that's something with you, I would assume, because of, your love of basketball, through women's basketball, and then it also developing your own game, that had to be something that you brought into the scouting table. I would
Yes.
Right.
assume. How did that,
Hmm.
I mean, were you looking, you had to have brought that different perspective coming from watching women's basketball.
Yes, yes, and it's and that also those thoughts and those skills were also grown in my time in sports marketing at Nike
Mm,
also.
mm,
So it made me
yeah,
look at the game from a different
sure.
perspective, as well as when I worked at ESPN. I'm in the media, and as you're in the
Hmm.
media, you're also gaining these relationships with players, and you're learning about all of the organic or innate things that are unique to them or things that they're passionate about
Totally.
that brands can leverage once these players become professionals. And now we're seeing it. This is so crazy that it took this long for it to happen,
Yeah.
where at least college players are able to make money off their likenesses now
Right.
and marketing money. So it's so crazy.
Yeah.
And but see that. And so when I was scouting, there were times as well as I am when we are scouting, we certainly are trying to ascertain what type of person this particular player is that we're looking to draft or
Right.
looking to sign or looking to trade for.
Right.
And so when you are doing that background work, and I did a lot of that background work when I was with the Suns because
Hmm.
of my time at ESPN at Nike. So just having different relationships and different experiences helped
Right.
me in that regard. So when you are doing that, one of the things that I'm thinking about as I'm talking to this player is, hey, this will be a great thing for our marketing department to know about. This
Right.
will be a great aspect about your personality that our communications department needs to know about.
Right.
Or your agent should reach out to this charity or to this cause because
Right.
this is something that you are organically passionate about,
Right.
and we don't have to manufacture that. And
Hmm.
one of the things that you see from a branding perspective is when you are in the sports world and
Hmm.
we're watching these players, really, and now that we have social media, we have Twitter, we have Snap, we
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
IG, consumer is saying now, if you want me to pay a premium for whatever product that you are attached to, whatever
Hmm.
product or whatever company you're partnered with, and you are essentially pushing their products, the consumer is saying, if you want me to pay $200 for a pair of sneakers, whether it's fair or not, I need to know something about what you stand for,
Right.
especially in this time with the things that we have
Oh
going
yeah.
on in the world.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, the brands have to know what resonates with the players organically,
Right.
and what are opportunities that they can leverage to make sure that it connects at retail. Because even in the case of, this is why it was such a huge miss with Cheryl Miller,
Hmm.
because when you look at Michael Jordan, it's not always about, from a retail standpoint, and you're leveraging things, it's not about if you are someone's favorite player,
Hmm.
best. It's not about if you're the best player.
Hmm.
Excuse me. It's about if you are if everybody's favorite player. And
Hmm.
when you can have the best player and everyone's favorite player embodied in one person,
Hmm.
that's the home run. That's
Right.
Yep.
Michael
Yep.
Jordan.
Yeah.
And the miss was when we had the opportunity, and I was just a kid when this was going on,
Mm.
but with Cheryl Miller, she was everybody's favorite player. And,
Right.
and in addition to being the best player, and there was no sort of presence to try to merge both of those worlds.
Right.
And
Right.
so even if you are selfish, you can see
Right.
that, right? And I just look at it now, and again, this is from my experience as a scout, working in the media, working in
Yeah.
sports marketing. I just look at that and I'm like, how could people miss that?
Right.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, taking all of that information that you have, I would love for you to tell us, how is this now, how are you manifesting this now for your dad? If I'm sorry, for your daughter, because you are a girl dad.
Yes.
And I know you said she's doing a lot. She's doing some soccer, some tennis, some swimming. Still hasn't gotten the basketball bug.
Not yet. Not yet.
But how are you seeing what's happening, or from what we've talked about and what and your wife as well, having played basketball? How is that manifesting for your daughter? How do you see, like, we know, there was Kobe Bryant, who was a huge advocate. I mean, he was a co-conspirator really going on there.
Right.
Gigi, there
Right.
was tons of momentum. And then the pandemic hit, and, almost like it came to happen, was the momentum was lost because of the pandemic
Yes.
for women's sports. But where do you see that as a girl dad now? Like, how are you going to push that forward for her? What are you seeing, as you don't want to have that stop sign that Cheryl Miller had? What are some things that you are putting forth?
Well, one of the things for sure is to the fact that if she so desired, she can play in the W,
Right.
and she can aspire to play in the W. And the W is just so important. It's so
Mm,
needed. And because
I love it.
there are so many talented girls that are playing this sport
Mm,
that they need a vehicle to display their talents.
right.
And they should not have to go to Europe to do that.
Right.
And if they desire to go to Europe, then great. But also too with the as we're on this topic,
Mm,
people don't realize how difficult it is to make the W. In
mm,
the
Yep.
NBA, it would be absurd to hear that a first round pick is cut before they played a game in the
Yeah.
yeah.
NBA.
It's so
It's
nuts.
absurd, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have enough teams. So you
Yeah.
have talented women,
Hmm.
super talented women that are first round picks, and teams can't afford to develop them.
Hmm.
And it really is, that's something that I feel like we need to fight for. When
Mm,
I was working in the W and I was working in the NBA as an associate, there were 14 teams.
mm,
We now have 12
right.
with 12 jobs per team. So there are
It's
144
insane.
players in the league, right? It's insane. It
Yeah.
So
is
small.
insane. So as difficult as it is to make it in the NBA, and it's crazy difficult,
Mm,
it's even more difficult to be in the W.
insane.
And so but at the same time, it's so refreshing and it's so good that there is a vehicle for talented players to play. And now we're seeing the player. It's so great for me because I was actually at the forum when Lisa Leslie and Rebecca Lobo were at half court in the ceremonial tip. I was there.
Nice.
and,
Wow.
Nice.
and
Yeah.
so now the players that we're watching now watch them.
Right.
And so it's good to see that and to see,
Mm,
because again, um, when we going back to Pamela McGee,
mm,
people forget this, and even Cynthia Cooper, as dominant as Cynthia Cooper was in the W, that was the tail end of her prime.
yeah.
She was 34 years old,
Man.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we didn't see her getting into her prime in her early to mid 20s, and then when she got into her prime, we didn't see that because there was no outlet.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the fact that we have the W is so great. So with my daughter, we're going to games this summer for sure.
Awesome.
uh, yeah, because we can't wait to see the I think because of proximity, and also
Sure.
because we like Satu Sabali as well.
Oh,
Right,
Yes.
we love her.
yes.
I
We
love
love
her.
her.
Great.
We
I
love her.
love her.
Yeah.
I love
I'm
Satu
surprised she
Sabali.
went. I mean, I
Yeah,
know why she went number two, but still, a lot of question
I,
marks.
I cannot wait to watch her. I can't wait to watch her because I love her as a scout. I love her as a player. And
Right.
again, that's Cheryl Miller's legacy.
Right.
Watching a big that can do all of those things on the perimeter.
Right.
Right.
Play with pace. I can score in the paint as well.
Mm,
She shoots jumpers with her left. I can score around the rim with my right. I can
right.
do that, but I can also take you out and hit this three on you. I can
Right.
also pull up in the mid range. I can also create off the dribble and get all the way to the bucket. That's Cheryl Miller's legacy.
Right.
And watching Tamika catching, that's Cheryl Miller's legacy.
Mhm.
So my daughter and other girls having the ability to watch these players, it's amazing. So and then the other thing too about the W that I like to say is oftentimes people compare the W to the NBA. The NBA, we're almost at the 80th season.
Mm.
The W is about to play their 24th season, right?
Big
So,
difference.
so to put that in perspective,
Yeah.
when the great Magic Johnson and the great Larry Bird came to the NBA
Mm.
and they played in the finals in 1979, the NBA finals were on tape delay. They weren't even shown live,
Wow.
right?
Yeah,
That and
that's
so
right.
that so that's in 1979. The league had
Yeah.
been around for a while,
Yeah,
right?
you're right.
So people compare the W to the NBA now,
Right.
and none of us weren't around when the NBA was 23 years old,
Right.
right? We weren't
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I think people need to really appreciate the artistry of these players. And if
Yeah.
you're looking at this from a business standpoint, if you want to compare apples to apples, go back and look at the NBA when it was 23,
Right.
right? So when
So
you have
smart.
Magic Johnson and Larry Bird playing on tape delay in
Yeah.
the finals, what that's saying is the league is on life support, right? That's what it's saying.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And so, right. And again, I was part of that. But again, being a football and baseball person, I was part of the reason why the league was on life support.
Right.
The league wasn't reaching kids back
Right.
then. So I think people don't look at the W the way that they should.
Right.
And it's an amazing game. The women are amazing players.
Yeah.
And every person that I remember my first year being in the league office,
Mm.
and these were epic battles. The battles between the Detroit Shock,
Mm.
right? That
Yeah.
ended up being the Tulsa Shock, that ended up being the Dallas Wings,
Right.
right? But the
Your team,
battles,
I'm assuming your team.
my team were the Sparks because I
Okay.
grew up
Yeah.
in LA,
Okay, now
right?
LA. Yeah.
So battles between the Tulsa Shock and the Sparks when they were competing in the finals in the early 2000s,
Mm.
it was epic.
Mm.
And you had two teams that were great teams, had great players,
Mm.
right? Tweety Nolan, Cheryl Ford, Swin Cash,
Mm.
I,
Mm.
and I can
Yeah.
go on and on. And then, of course, Delisha Milton, Lisa Leslie, Tamika Dixon,
Yeah.
Mawadi Mabika, etc. Right? Epic battles, epic. And then the coaches are Michael Cooper and Bill Laimbeer.
Mm.
Epic battles between the Pistons and the
Wow.
Lakers,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
these teams don't like each other,
Yeah. No.
right? Right? They
Yeah.
didn't like each other. So, and the battles were epic. And I remember being in my first year, I remember having to go to Detroit
Mm.
and going to the Palace for the finals.
Mm.
And I remember how loud it was.
Mm.
And I remember watching these great players play that don't like each other.
Right.
And for me, a basketball adrenaline junkie, it was I'm there as a league official and my palms are sweaty. And I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat. I want to jump out there. It was epic. It was epic. And so
Wow.
I'm saying, and I'm actually sitting next to men that said, I've never been to, this is my first time attending a WNBA game.
Wow.
And they were hooked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's I think it's important that the league continues to grow. I
Mm.
think the league also has to be mindful about finding opportunities where they
Yeah.
can continue to brand the players because as the league has kind of tried to survive, it's often become about the teams like football.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
you can do that in football when every game's a holiday because you're playing once a week.
Right.
But when you play a sport where you're having multiple games a week, it's
Yeah.
got to be about the players.
Yeah.
And they have that formula sort of, they got it down pat for the men in the
Yeah.
NBA. You need to start seeing more efforts on the NBA
Agreed.
side in terms of branding these players if you
Yeah.
really want these players to be the pop culture figures that they actually can be
Yeah.
and that they actually are.
You're so right. We talk about this a lot, and we talk about like why are we not seeing more of these stories being built for the W and the different players. The hopes is that maybe with Sabrina coming in and what she's bringing, maybe that could jumpstart it. As like the new generation.
Right.
There has, but also beyond Sabrina, right? How many of those other players have stories? Because if you look
Yes.
at even like NBA, right, it was all about Zion this past season, and in
Hmm.
reality, it became a story about John Morant.
Yep.
Right.
And it was something
Right.
that just developed because they were there was a breather, right? So like thinking about Sabrina and if what else is going on around her, and maybe they have the new commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, and hopefully she'll have that mindset and she'll be able to develop that, which I think would be really a smart move for the W. 100%.
No, for
Absolutely.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Because for me, um, again, liking that competitive nature and
Right.
addicted to that. And shout out to Kelsey Plum, get well
Oh
soon.
yeah. Sure.
Speedy
Yeah.
With her
recovery.
Achilles. Yeah.
I was so looking forward. The pettiness between the Mystics and the Aces. Oh my goodness.
So good.
It's so
Oh,
good.
it's so
It's
good.
Live for it.
so good,
Oh,
right?
I mean, Liz Cambage alone,
Right, right,
oh,
right,
she's
The
so
right,
queen.
good.
right. And I couldn't wait to watch them play. I
Right.
couldn't wait. And
So good.
so, and so many stories that we can tell.
Yes.
Liz has her own story,
Oh
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mental health.
She
Yep.
has her own story. Yeah. And so incredible player. The things that
Yeah.
she's been through in Australia with the things that we have going on right now.
Totally.
It's so many things that the league can
Yeah.
really be mindful about making sure that we capitalize on and not just painting with broad strokes and it's all
Agreed.
about the teams, all about the teams. It's about these
Agreed.
players.
Agreed. And we also have seen the W being much more they take on activism a lot more
Yes.
in the
Social
league.
Yes.
justice activism. Yep.
Social justice, they've been at the forefront.
Community stuff. Yep.
Natasha
Yes.
Cloud was just named the first female brand for Converse. She's the
Yep.
first female basketball athlete. She's bisexual and biracial, so and
Hmm.
she's like giving the voice to the voiceless. I mean, there's just so many
She's
stories
incredible.
there. Oh, seriously, like
She's incredible. And I love
I
point guards too, because I was a point
yeah,
guard. So
Yes.
like I'm
Nice.
she
very
Yeah.
partial to
Same.
point guards.
she talks a lot
Very
about
partial to
point.
point
Yeah,
guards.
she does talk a lot about about being a point guard with the Mystics and how she had to develop that confidence, right? Because you got to make those plays, and you got
No
someone like
question.
Elena Del Don, and you got some real veterans
No
that you
question.
just gotta like be like, okay, I gotta call these, I gotta make these calls, and so
Yeah.
she talks about her development and that, and how that gave her confidence, not only as a player but as a person, to then
Yes.
do the advocacy, the co-conspirator, the activism that she's putting forth, and it's just amazing to see. And those are the stories that we don't get enough headlines,
Yeah.
Not at all.
And like you
Not
not
said,
at
at
all.
all.
Antonio, I mean, it's only 144 positions. I mean, this is the top of the top. They have stories. Like, I don't get,
Right.
that's a miss, big
Huge
time.
miss.
Yes, a
Huge
huge
miss.
miss. It's
Huge
huge
miss.
miss from brands, from the league, etc. And I say that in the most respectful way possible because I love the league,
Right.
and I just
I
want to
get you.
see more of those stories being told. And I
Agreed.
think also too that continues to create lanes for other players,
Hmm.
younger players that have the same stories that or have different stories that say, you
Absolutely.
know what, I watched my favorite player really be out front and talk about their experience in whatever
Absolutely.
area they have that experience in. That gives me the confidence to do the same thing. So
Absolutely.
I'm certainly looking forward to the league continuing to tell these stories. I
Absolutely.
can say this really quick about the branding. Again, I'm a sneakerhead also because I just feel like,
2 and 2.
Yep.
yes, I'm a sneakerhead. It seems like basketball culture does that to you.
Yep.
And I'll say this from a branding standpoint. I remember being disappointed that I couldn't find Cheryl Swoops' shoe in my size. I was
Oh, I
so
love
upset.
that.
I was so upset. Like, I got to get those, right? And I was
Yeah.
so upset when I couldn't find her shoe in my
Yeah.
size. And I remember going to the stores. I would look in East Bay, all these different places,
East
right?
Bay,
And
I love
that's
it.
when
Yeah.
being a sneakerhead wasn't quote unquote as mainstream as it
Sure.
is
Yep.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
weren't as many sneaker boutiques, all
No
these different
Right.
things,
apps.
Yeah.
right? Resale, there wasn't any of that. It was just
Right.
kind of its own little culture,
Yeah.
right? And I remember, man, I tried to do everything I could to find her shoe. So
Well, maybe now,
This is a
maybe
call
now.
out. Yeah, this is a call
Yeah.
out for everyone listening. If you could find it.
What's your size? What's
Yeah.
your size?
well, it depends on the shoe, but sometimes I have to go down in sizes if they run wide.
Right?
So I'll wear a 12.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Anybody
gotta get
listening?
Or
yeah,
yeah,
we gotta get Cheryl Swoops a shoe. I need those.
bring it back
I
on the
need
market.
those. Nike, you need to retro those,
Yes,
Agreed. I
yes.
agree.
right?
Bring it.
You
Agreed.
need to retro those.
Agree. Agree. And that's another thing. Again, money. We want to give you our money. Like there's so many things I want to give my money to, and it's like make it, and we will buy it. We will sell it out.
No
So
question
let's
about
do
that.
this.
No question about that. No
Well,
question.
I'm so glad that we had you on in this conversation that we're having. We were hoping that you wouldn't leave right away because we want to talk about some of the current developing stories around the proposals. So if we take a quick break, would you be able to hang on with us and delve a little deeper into that with your insights?
Absolutely. I'm having fun. I appreciate you
Oh,
all having
good.
me
Yes.
again. I hope I'm not
I
talking your ears off.
No,
No,
please.
no.
We're tired of talking.
I know, seriously. Like you're doing all the heavy lifting. I'm loving it right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So we'll just take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking about the developing story on the NBA and the WNBA proposals for the coronavirus season, I guess, if for lack of a better term, when we come back. And we're back, and Antonio's going to stay with us as we move into sports in the age of coronavirus. There was a couple of developing stories that I wanted to talk about on this episode, and I'm so glad Antonio could be here to also give some of his expertise on this. So, as we've been watching this happen, the NBA is talking about returning, right? And just recently, Chris Haynes put out a report that a lot of the players are actually disappointed by not having a vote regarding the NBA's return. So just a little like backtrack for how this has been developing. On May 12th, the NBA superstars came out in an established united front to have a private conversation, a conference call, to talk about resuming the season. And in that call, you had people like LeBron and Giannis, Kawhi, Steph, Damian, and Westbrook. So that happened, and they all had a united front as players saying, hey, we want the season to restart. June 4th is when the first proposal came out from the NBA, and they proposed a 22-team format with a lockdown and kind of like a bubble city, if you will, that would be in Orlando, Florida at Disney World. And the players were still deliberating on that vote. So then recently, with this report that came out by Chris Haynes, he said that there's multiple players that felt that they didn't have a voice, they weren't being heard. And this was something it's critically and potentially a life-changing vote, right? Because you are going to be sequestered. You don't know, if you have pre-existing conditions. I mean, COVID it could kill you essentially.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, that's a big one. Another subject they expressed was that they really believe that it's bad optics for a league to compromise a predominantly Black men's sport.
Yep.
And sequestering them in one location for 3 months merely to entertain the masses and to ease the league's economic burden. So that is like, they're saying optically, this doesn't feel like it's a good look for us. And also from a health standpoint, we feel like we're not getting enough voice for something that could kill us, essentially playing that. So Kyrie Irving, from this story, he's the VP of the National Basketball Players Association, is leading a 200-player conference call to kind of discuss more about these points and the proposal for the players. And as you know, Kyrie is such an easy target. Like people can, I mean, he's made himself an easy target in a lot of
Earth.
ways. Yeah, there's a lot of things about Kyrie that's like he's put himself in that position. But in this sense, you know, my thought is he's trying to do the best thing for the players. So I don't
Yes,
like, I know we all want to like maybe be petty and talk shit about him, but at the end of the day, he's trying to do something for the players.
no
On
question.
the W side, just really quickly going through their proposal. So initially, Michelle Vopel first reported about the proposal for ESPN, and that was what that was saying is, you know, the initial proposal. It came out on June 4th. It was going to be a 22 game season at the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida.
Hmm.
There was going to be a 60% pay to eligible players. Children of players, along with caretakers, would be able to be in the bubble, right? Players with 5+ years experience would be allowed to bring a +1 when they reach the playoffs or the semifinals. Players were allowed to opt out with no pay. There was no personal chefs, but they were going to have like seamless.com or per diem for groceries. The players pushed back. And according to recent sources from The Next, which was written by Howard Magel, Ari Chambers, and Bella Capellani, as well as today on Twitter from at Women's Basketball 24/7 and at the Sky Show Shy. The latest proposal has 100% pay to players, including the players with medically certified as high risk if they contracted coronavirus. There's still the opt out with no penalty, but there would be no pay. And I believe, although I don't have the specifics, there would be able to have a +1, but there'd be an additional cost. Like you'd have to pay $4,000 for them, including like food and lodging and what have you. So those are the two proposals. They're developing, you know, as we speak. I'm sure by the time this comes out, it could be signed, sealed, delivered.
Hmm.
But I would like to know with this story, Antonio, what the fuck? Like
Yeah,
how we
yeah,
here on the Hoops Talk have said cancel the NBA season. That has we love basketball. We have this podcast because of basketball. So
no
there's
question.
no question around our love for basketball, but we've always felt that, you know, even prior, just the spark of the pandemic, you know, not in addition to everything else that's going on, that this was a time when we could say, okay, let's just close the season. Let's just have it as it is, regroup, do a million other things you could do, and start this season coming up. Because the way that this is structured, you would literally end the season, I guess, in October and start the new season in November anyway. So
Hmm.
there's lots of
Hmm.
complications. Now with, you know, protests happening, we feel like the league could really be focusing this short period of time to, you know, racial inequality, police brutality, a lot of the issues that do affect this predominantly Black league. You know,
Hmm.
that's kind of what we were talking about. And then when it comes to the W, I mean, there's just like forever disrespect that happens to the W. You know, while
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
negotiating chefs for the NBA, they're getting seamless.com.
You're right. You're
Yeah, with
right.
the shirts
Exactly.
that they have to go buy
For
Exactly.
themselves.
groceries. Yeah, and they have to cover themselves.
Exactly.
So there's a lot there because, you know, you're looking at two sides of the same coin, but at the same time, like, what do we do with this? What? And then, you know, you hear on Twitter like, oh, these basketball millionaires, we don't want to hear them complain, this
See,
and that. What are your thoughts hearing this and seeing this develop and having, you know, you have been in these franchises or have been in the NBA and even in just like brands like Nike and ESPN? Like, what are your initial thoughts on how this is developing and what you think should happen moving forward?
well, one of the things that you alluded to earlier, Liz, is the bottom line is the bottom line,
Yeah.
right? And that's and when you look at the NBA, is a couple of things to consider. One, the NBA lost some revenue with what
Mm,
happened earlier in the season
sure.
with the Daryl Morey tweet and all of those different things. So there
Sure.
was a
That's true.
revenue loss there.
Very true.
And
Very true.
now here's another revenue loss and the thing we have to think about with basketball in particular is from a branding perspective, when you talk about partnerships, when you talk about companies actually paying dollars to the league to run their spots, to sell their products, and wanting people to watch that, the playoffs and the part of the league that we're missing now is the playoffs, and we're missing the beginning part of the season for the W right now.
Mm,
So what the NBA does is they leverage that when they ask for money from brands to run spots during
got it.
games.
Okay.
So they ask those brands to pay a
Mm,
premium because right now basketball is, if we were in during quote unquote regular times,
sure.
basketball would command the American sports conscience because we are
Right.
past the NFL draft. Training camp hasn't started for the NFL.
Correct.
Baseball is too early for people to really start to dive in.
True.
And the other thing that you think about with baseball as well is MLS and soccer is starting to surpass baseball
Yeah.
in terms
Oh,
of interest in this country.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
with that being said, the NBA and the W, they command the American sports conscience. And the NBA leverages that with respect to the brands when they're asking them to pay for
Got it.
time to run their spots.
Sure. That makes sense.
So it's a huge sort of loss of revenue that
Okay.
the NBA is dealing with on both ends.
Okay.
So that's the urgency to bring the season back.
Okay.
And when you talk about that from a college perspective, one of the things you have going on in football, this is another argument, but it's the same thing.
Mm,
You're asking players, predominantly black players that play in college football, to come on campus and play college football games,
yep.
and the students aren't coming on campus. So
Yep.
now, if you're the NCAA, at that point, if you do that and the students aren't there and you're playing college football, your argument for amateurism in college football completely goes to shit,
Yeah.
right? That's the truth, right? So
Exactly. Okay.
so with that being said, all about the revenue. It's always about the revenue. And to your point, Liz, that you said about people complaining about millionaire athletes, notice we always play with semantics.
Mm,
In 2011, we
Yep,
had a
yep.
lockout. That's a
hmm
lockout. And when we say lockout, by definition, it means that the owners are telling the players, don't show up.
right.
But who gets the blame for that? The players, because the owners never open up their books.
Yep.
So people don't know how much owners really make.
Right.
So it's always on the owners. And so now, I mean, on the players, I'm sorry. So now, when you juxtapose the players' union in the NBA
Right.
versus Major League Baseball, now, one of the things positive that we can say about Major League Baseball with
Mm,
respect to the players' union is
mm,
one of the reasons why they're not playing it now is because the Major League Baseball Players Association
hmm
is probably the strongest union in all of American professional
Oh,
sports.
okay.
Interesting.
So the
Interesting.
players are like, nah, we ain't going.
Right.
Not for what you guys are talking about.
Sure.
So now the season is in jeopardy.
Okay.
And the NBA Players Association is stronger than the NFL Players Association,
Totally.
but it doesn't have the solidarity that Major League Baseball has in
Got
terms
it.
with respect to their Players Association. So their players have more of a powerful voice. So
hmm
that's why they are like, nah, that's not gonna
Right. Yeah.
work for us. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the players are taking the blame for that. But the reality is that their union is much, and of course it's always big bank take little bank. So the
Sure.
owners will always win that battle.
Yeah.
But the players in Major League Baseball are so united. They have such a stronger union than all the other sports
hmm
that they can say, you know what, yeah, it's not
mm
working for us.
Sure.
And so then now we see Kyrie and we see remnants of that where certain
Mm.
players have agreed, yes, we're going to play, and
Sure.
these are the ramifications that we're going to compete under. And now you have this pretty substantial voice of players that are saying, nah, you know what, we didn't
Right.
even have a conversation about this,
That's what I'm
right?
Right,
saying.
right.
Yes. So it
Yeah.
speaks to the disconnect. And even though the players union for the NBA is strong,
Yeah.
but it's still not at the level of, say, a Major League Baseball.
Okay.
And so that's something to really sort of consider and to really look at. And I was asked by USA Today
Mm.
this is before we even had a sort of framework of when the season was going to come back.
Mhm. Okay.
This was almost probably a month and a half ago.
Okay.
And I was asked if I could ballpark it. I was asked to give a percentage of
Mhm.
how many players would really want to go back and play,
Mm.
given all the things that we know from a health standpoint or the
Sure.
things that we don't know from a health standpoint.
Right, right,
That's the
right,
bigger issue. There are things
right,
that we don't know about this.
right.
As,
Yeah.
as you said, Liz, earlier, we do know that it can kill you, but there are
Yep.
a bunch
Mhm.
of other things that we don't know about this,
Right.
right? And so I was asked to give a percentage of players that will want to come back. And the percentage that I gave, honestly, was about 20%. And
Sheesh.
and and I thought, you know what, maybe that's low. But now, as things are coming out,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't so low
Hmm.
Right.
because people are thinking about what are we risking here? And this is before we had the things that we have from a social and a societal standpoint that we have
Right.
going on now.
Exactly.
So this is before that.
Right.
So now we have the pandemic,
Mhm.
and we have the social things that we better be cognizant of,
Oh,
that
Oh
absolutely.
we
yeah.
better look at changing. and
Absolutely.
and now, so you have all of these things, and then you have people saying, now I don't have to be afraid to voice not only my
Sure.
experience but where I'm at right now because of my experiences.
Sure.
And so now, where people are voicing that, and along with the fact that we are in uncertain times from a health standpoint,
Mhm.
and players are saying, wait a minute, why are we really doing this?
Right.
And so that's the thing that you have going on in the NBA. And then, to your point, Liz, in the W, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm looking at playing. Why are we even playing a 22 game season?
Yeah.
Right.
And we just had it's so, I feel so bad for players in the W,
Mhm.
because we just had a big deal in terms of renegotiating the CBA.
Yes.
And
Yep.
now
Big.
they
Huge.
can't even realize some of the benefits
Oh,
Yeah.
of the new CBA brings.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate, and that's out of everybody's control,
Yeah.
right? But
Absolutely.
at the same time, the sort of guidelines that they're looking at bringing the league back in, just as a fan, and maybe I'm looking at it too much as a fan,
Mm.
but looking at it, I'm thinking, this why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we have to love the players more than we love the game.
Yeah.
Exactly,
When it
exactly.
comes to like they have the potential, let's say they don't get sick, but they're asymptomatic and then they go and they give it to a caretaker or to,
Yeah.
there's just so much to your point.
Possibilities.
We
Right.
just don't know everything because even if they, I don't know, it's so up in the air. And I just feel like for our entertainment is not enough of a reason
Nope.
unless
Agreed.
there's 100% buy-in from all the players and they're 100% comfortable with the terms of which they'll be going in, and that
Yes.
there's transparency to it. Because I was reading the WNBA proposal as it's developing, and I'm like, do I have to get a lawyer to explain this?
That's virtually what you have to do. That's
Yeah.
what you may need a lawyer to go to the games after,
Yeah,
what,
exactly.
as a fan.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
It's true. You're
Right.
gonna have to sign a waiver that says if you die, you're not gonna blame the NBA or anybody. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Right. Right.
I li- we love basketball. We would love for sports to come back, but to the mental gymnastics that it takes, one, to navigate the proposals that you're going to sign to play, and then thinking about every time you play the protocols of safety that you're going to have to put in place. How is that going to hurt your game? How is that, like, the community that then that is from those areas that have to sustain the bubble?
Right.
The
Right.
All the
journalists.
workers who have to be there.
Right.
Now, the
Exactly.
journalists that come in, are they going to have to be in the bubble? I know, like, I'm not an athlete, but I'm here in my house and I can almost not stand myself in this bubble,
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I'm over that
Sometimes we
bubble.
Oh yeah, we're all over the bubble.
agree. Agree.
And
Sometimes I get in the car and just have to drive because I'm over the
Oh
bubble.
yeah.
Right.
right?
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure these players are like, they're not even going to be in the comfort of their own home. At least we're in the comfort of our own home. We know, our habits, we know the people around us, and that's going to be taken. And then even for the W, it's even worse because they're like, okay, you can't have a +1 unless they're your child
You
or a
want to pay for it.
caretaker. Or yeah, or you're
Yeah.
going to pay
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, so I can get 100% of my salary, but I could get sick and
Right.
I won't even be able to have anybody that I would want to have. It's just really bizarre. I just think it's to me, it's like, it's so bizarre to even think that these are the conversations that you're having with a human toll, with a human, like,
Right.
life, that you're like, okay, what are my risk ratios, just so that we can get a game on. And I understand the bottom line. It's always follow the money. It's what I always
Right.
say. I always say follow the money. And I understand that, but I just think, like, if you don't have enough offshore banks with money in it at this point as an owner, then you didn't prepare.
Right.
Then
Right.
you didn't
Right.
prepare. Right.
Yeah.
You-
And
Yeah.
I get irritated from the whole, like, a lot of people say, well, don't do this, don't boycott this, because then workers or people aren't going to benefit. It's all up to the owners how they redistribute wealth.
Yeah.
So
Right.
this is on
Right.
them. Like, there
That's
is plenty
exactly
of
right.
money in the NBA. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. There is
Yep.
plenty. Like, shift that shit around.
Yeah, they're
That
swimming like
facts.
Scrooge
Facts.
McDuck in, like, piles of gold coins,
In
and
Florida,
and it's
offshore.
like, I'm like, for real?
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
and it's almost like, okay, so if a player opts out, you're not going to pay them. That doesn't seem right either,
No.
because they're still part of your franchise. They're
I
still
know
part of your
small
team.
businesses on furlough, but they're going to still pay their workers because of COVID. Like, that makes no sense to me.
I mean, and if we know anything about this, administration, they love the money. So they're going to make sure that their counterparts that are owners are going to be just fine. So no one's yacht is going to have to be sold.
That's right.
You go ahead and pay all
That-
the players, and you
That's
have to,
right.
or in our opinion, we've always been like, just cancel the season. It breaks my heart because, let me tell you, I had my Sparks tickets all ready to go.
Right.
I have the WNBA app on my Apple TV. We're buying the
Me
new
too.
swag, right? We're getting it all ready
Right.
because we're just, like,
Right.
ready for the
Yep.
W to happen, as we're, because we didn't know what was happening in the NBA. And yeah, but I'm okay. I'll watch Korean baseball. That's hopping. I'm watching that late at night. NASCAR with
Yeah.
Bubba. I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah,
watch
Right.
NASCAR
Right.
with
Yeah.
Bubba.
NASCAR's got a
Yeah.
new viewer right here.
We all riding with Bubba. Let's go,
That's
Bubba.
right.
Right.
That's right. I was just telling my friend, I was like, yeah, we had races where I'm from Watsonville, the Santa Cruz County Fair. And I said, man, if there was a boy like Bubba at the races, I'd be a NASCAR wifey right now.
I heard that. I heard. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's like NASCAR is so lucky that they have that, whole narrative that they can, a whole brand new leaf they could turn with just him,
Sure.
starting.
For
But yeah, I
You,
mean,
you,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, what it speaks to, and you, Karen and Liz, you both are just spot on, and what it speaks to, and I can say this as a Black man, what it speaks to is the other thing when we go to compete, and you're looking at these athletes, what it speaks to is you essentially think that we're superhuman when we're
Mhm.
competing,
Yep.
Mhm.
and then off the floor, you think I'm subhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the dichotomy, and that's
Mhm.
the that's what's at stake here, and that's
It
what
is.
at the core of it, that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
And I know people, it may not be the on brand thing to say, but it's the facts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so again, So when you look again in college basketball, so you're telling me, or college football, so
Mm.
you're telling me again, these athletes, these football players, as we all know, football is not a social distance sport. Neither is
Yeah.
basketball.
No, a lot of
Football is a
sweat,
collision
spit.
sport,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, football is a collision sport. Basketball is a contact sport.
Yeah.
And so these aren't social distancing sports.
Mm.
And so you're telling me that again, are you telling me that these athletes are superhuman enough where they can go and make money for you, but the conditions are such that the students can't be there?
Right.
No,
And
yeah.
and it's one of the things that when Val Ackerman, again, shout out Val, uh, was the president of the W when I was there.
Right.
Um, she said for the Big East, she said if the students aren't on campus, there are no Big East sports,
Right.
Yep.
and
Agree.
that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, well, let's talk. No, that's it.
Yeah.
If the students aren't on campus, we can't play.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the boat that I'm in. And again,
Mm-hmm.
as you all both so eloquently said, I love this sport. I couldn't wait for the W.
Can't wait.
And but at the expense of their health, I can wait.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I can
and the
wait.
facts that you said, superhero on court, subhuman off court,
Right.
those facts, you didn't make those facts.
Nope.
Right,
The other people made the
Right.
facts.
Right.
Let's
right,
remember that.
right,
Let's remember where those facts come from. Not from you, because you
right,
didn't make them. So that's where they need to show us that they're understanding what's happening in the movement, in society, in the world.
Hmm.
And
right.
if they could just have that conversation, maybe
Yeah.
something. I
And
don't know.
let's remember to pull up that green curtain and show what's the predominant race in management and leadership, and
Yes.
even fans, the ones especially
Right,
who are like,
right,
I want this game now. It's
right,
like, oh,
right,
okay, I see you.
Yeah,
right. That's
absolutely.
facts. That is spot on.
Hmm.
Spot on. That is absolutely true. Especially, in most games you go and you go and you look at the lower bowl
Oh yeah,
and it
right.
looks
The court
right,
side.
right. It looks
Yeah.
oftentimes it looks different than the players that are out there playing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so exactly right, Karen. Like they are the ones I need this now.
Hmm.
And you have sort of dehumanized the athlete
Absolutely.
and you have made them and it's a weird dichotomy. It's something that we often carry. It's something that
Mm.
throughout my career, it's a skill and it takes a toll on you at the same time
Sure.
and I mean this in the most respectful way
Mm.
possible. In my working career,
Hmm.
of knowing when you want me to exhibit my quote unquote knowledge that's beyond this problem
Right.
that you're at that needs to be solved. Knowing when you want me to do that and know, okay, now I did it. Now I got to know that you want to put me back in my box,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And now
Whew.
it's and again, I mean this in the most respectful and lack of conceit when I say this,
Yeah.
but I have to know when you want me to be smart, when you want me to
Mm.
do these things that go above and beyond my respective job title,
Yeah.
and when you want me to, okay, just do what you asked me to do,
Mm.
right? And and so that is a skill, that is something that takes an incredible toll on you
Sure.
to not go to work and say, you know what, I'm just going to go here and just be the best version of me
Mm.
and contribute to the place that I work at.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so when people
Mm.
always talk about this diversity, that's one of the reasons why I actually don't like the term,
Mm.
because diversity, and when we see it in the workplace, it almost you're almost inferring tolerance. Tolerance
Mm.
and understanding and tolerance and acceptance are two different things,
Yes.
Sure. Yes.
right? And so now when you say diversity, okay, as a black man, I check the box. I'm here.
Mm.
But if you really want to find the best ways to solve problems, it's the diversity of thought,
Yep.
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And taking all of that thought into account and solving the problem
Mm.
and not be threatened because I'm good at what I do.
Yeah.
Right.
It's incredibly difficult to have to manage that and
Mm-hmm.
to have to
Hmm.
go to work and think about, okay, what do you want me to do today, or what do you want
Mm-hmm.
me to do in this instance, it's incredibly difficult to have to think about.
And Liz and I experienced too, or be the one person in the room that's like, wait, hold, do I have to say everything? Do we have to
Yeah.
scream this out loud and then also be seen as like the difficult one?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Where you have to be seen as the difficult one. Also, operate just when you look at in the Black community, there is no sort of one experience, and we're all the same.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I take that into account. But then also, when I'm sitting in a meeting and I may be the only person of color in there,
Mm,
even though there isn't one experience, there are a myriad of different experiences,
yeah.
views, ways of thinking, etc. But you also have to operate as the quote unquote spokesman of because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's so. And then one of the things, to talk about it from a basketball perspective, when you look at The Last Dance and you look at Phil Jackson, or you look at Steve
Mm,
Kerr, or you look at Greg Popovich, those coaches were able to sustain a a long run of success because they got outside of their own experience.
mm,
Because Greg Popovich, Steve Kerr, and Phil Jackson represent a group in America, honestly, that they can be successful and not only they don't have to take into account Liz's experiences, Karen's experiences, Antonio's experiences. They not only do not have to take them into account, they can actually be dismissive and disrespectful to us and
mm,
still be successful.
Yep.
yeah. Yeah.
White men can do that in this country.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Mm,
and so they were able to sustain their experience, I mean their success,
mm,
because they actually took a look at their locker room and said, you know what, if I connect with these players outside of this round orange brown ball that
mm,
they're playing with, I can then achieve the buy-in from a coaching perspective. So
right.
Phil
Hmm.
Jackson gave books to players and things. You hear about this a lot,
Yeah.
where each player got a different book,
Yep.
and that book was sort of representative of where that player was in their respective journey in their career,
Mm,
in their lives. And so what the player looks at once they get past this is corny and they actually peel the onion and look at what it's doing,
mhm,
it's saying Phil Jackson is saying, you know what, I've observed you, I've listened to you, I know where
mm,
you are in your career. These are some of the things that can be helpful to you for this point, and
mm,
that you can build a platform that you can catapult off of for
mm,
success in the future. Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr, when people ask them about the current person that's in office right now,
mhm,
Right.
mhm.
they spare no words.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mhm.
they say everything.
Yep.
And so what that communicates to those players is this guy cares about me
Yep.
more than just a basketball
Right.
player.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, they get that buy-in that they need to be successful, to allow these players to develop. And that's buy-in that you're going to need, because in the NBA, when you're drafting players and they are 1 year removed from high school,
Yep.
they are not fully matured.
Yeah.
Totally.
So if you want to get to the sweet part of their basketball production, then you better appeal to their development.
Mm.
And when I say appeal to their development, I'm not talking about listening to Travis Scott and that's
TikTok.
superficial stuff, right? Yeah, that's superficial stuff. That's superficial. I mean, really peeling the onion.
Yeah.
And the organizations that do that are the ones that are successful, because the
Agreed.
reality is, when you look at professional players and succeeding at that level,
Mm.
the overwhelming majority of professional players are successful. Their position, their situation,
Mm.
meaning who's the coach, what's the organization like, what system do they run, who are the teammates, those aspects in terms of developing as players are probably just as important as their talent.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
And the players that don't receive that enrichment are the ones that fall by the wayside more
Mm.
times than not.
Mm.
So, I think that's one of the things I say a lot. When players fail, it's rarely because of the talent.
Right.
They've been
Mm-hmm.
scouted backwards and forwards. They
Yep.
don't fail
Right.
because it's very rare that a player fails in W or in the NBA because they're simply just not good enough.
Right.
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 You know, when we watch, again, shout out Kelsey Plum, we want her to get healthy.
Mm.
As we watched her development,
Oh,
she was
absolutely.
always good enough to do the things that she's doing.
Totally.
It's other things happen for her from a mental standpoint.
Yeah.
Them investing in her development.
Yeah.
That's what gave her the confidence to do what she did in the playoffs last year.
You saw it.
She was,
We saw it.
yes,
We
she
saw
was
her.
always that talented.
Yeah. But it came alive. Like
It came
something just
alive.
True. Yep.
twisted and it just
Yes,
came
yes,
alive. And she was
yes.
activated in a way that, really enriched the team, but with her individual talent.
No question. And I can tell you as a guard, when you're on the floor with bigs that not only are as talented, but have the basketball IQ of an
Mm.
Asia Wilson and the Liz Cambage,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a lot easier for you to start doing your thing,
Yeah.
True.
right?
Very true.
So with that being said, Dearica Hamby, like all those,
Mm-hmm.
like, she was on the floor with amazing players. And
Yeah.
again, credit to her for doing what she did.
Mm-hmm.
But they invested in her development. Some things clicked with her. And now it all started to come together in the playoffs for her. So
Absolutely.
that's the plight for most every player that's in the league.
Right.
There are a handful of players that it doesn't matter who the teammates are, it doesn't matter what the conditions are, they're going to be successful. There's
Sure.
like 5 players that are really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, it's all of the ancillary things
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
make them successful.
Yeah.
And so I think in the organizations, whether you're in the W or whether you're in the NBA, the organizations that invest in those aspects
Yeah.
are the ones that have sustained success to a certain degree. And the
Totally.
ones that don't are the ones that are always struggling every
You need to go talk to the Knicks.
year.
I think.
Well, they've changed. They've changed, so they're changing. So we certainly want to see what they do. Yeah.
Well,
The
Antonio.
league needs them to be successful.
Oh God, yeah.
Right.
My
Right.
husband needs them to be successful. Okay, as a Knicks fan, I
Right.
need them
Oh,
to
I
be
know.
successful for my husband. So yeah.
Right.
Antonio, this was so awesome to talk
Yeah.
to you. We
Thank
could
you
go on
so
and on
much.
and on and
Oh,
on.
for sure.
We're gonna run out of tape though, and as they say in the old days. But it was so interesting to hear your point of view on the things that are happening right now with the proposals, and how the players are. You can put yourself in their shoes, and we love
Right.
to hear that. And that's such a great perspective. And I'm gonna let you lead with just one last thought. What I want from you, because our show will air on Wednesday. Do you
Okay.
think that the NBA and WNBA will have signed agreements by the time this show airs? Will there be a season? What's the percentage, or just a yes or no? I'll let you do either or.
I think I would say 75% that they will have a season,
Okay.
and I think they will find a way to figure this out. And I do think they'll have the season. And as I say that again, that's not saying because I want a season at any cost,
Right.
because I don't. I
Yep.
don't. But I do think they will have a season. I think the financial ramifications are just too great
Mm,
for people that have deeper pockets than the players.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense.
so I think they'll have a season. And I think it'll
Well,
be worked out.
this is a crystal ball. We're
Right
gonna
here.
see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll have scooped it if it happens, and when this comes out on Wednesday, we will have you on record, and go buy a lottery ticket if it comes true.
You're right. Exactly.
So, Antonio, thank you again so much for coming on. We wholly appreciate it.
Very appreciate it.
Our podcast is open for you anytime you just want to jump on, you want to throw us some stuff, or let's just keep the conversation going, because there's, even without sports, there is so much to
So
talk
much. Yep.
about.
Yes. Yes.
And we really look forward to seeing your work. Before you go, tell our audience all the places they can see you, read you, TikTok you, whatever it is.
Right.
What are your handles?
So my handles are a.williams basketball, and that's on Facebook, IG, Twitter. and not creative with the spelling, just how it's A.
I
Dot
love it.
Williams said.
Easy. Get to the point.
Basketball, right? Get to the point. Make it easy for everybody to find me. So I'm there, and again, I'm talking about not only basketball but other things as well. I would love to have you all on, and and and,
Ooh.
and
Definitely.
yes, kind of flip the script and ask questions as well because I'm all about having people that are about it, right? People that are out here doing things, and as opposed to just talking,
Sure.
and so I certainly want to hear you all's perspective. I'm such a big fan of what you all do.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
Thank you again for having me,
Love it.
and looking forward to continuing this fellowship. You guys are so important, so
Oh, thank
important.
you.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. It's
yes.
always good to hear it. Never tire of it. Always need a little blow up every once in a while. So we
Yes.
appreciate it.
No,
Thank
you're so
you.
important.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Antonio. And when we come back, Karen and I will finish up this situation. We're back. Woo!
Woo!
Energy.
My heart, my brain, all of it working.
Energy.
Love.
Antonio Williams.
Thank
Guys,
you again for joining us.
seriously, check him out. A. Williams basketball. Easy. As you hear it and spell it, of course, we'll put it on the episode notes, but that was such a great conversation. It was so in depth.
In depth. Yes. Deep.
Deep.
Profound.
Very much so. Very much so. I feel like it could almost be like a two-parter or something. It's long. I get it. Bear with us.
Our
But the
clock.
the conversation was just like, it was so riveting. You
Yeah.
know, I just feel like his perspective for all the time and expertise that he has in the industry. And then it was great. I'm so glad that we had him on, and that
Yeah.
conversation was we could have gone forever. So we're gonna have
Forever.
him back on.
Oh yeah. And like Ari mentioned on another show, let's really think about some virtual conference with some of the folks we've talked to, have special like segments or talks on topics that they're experts or passionate in. I mean, we can
Why
get real
not?
deep here, girl.
Manifest. Light some candles.
Maybe get some, and then we got to think about the bag, get some partnerships, get some brands,
Oh yeah,
some swag bags. You know what I mean?
Totally. You know, I always take it from here, and you always take it to 100, and that's what I love about you.
I'm the worst. Sorry.
I'm just like, oh, we should maybe try an IG live, and you're like, swag, sponsors, brands, and I'm like, oh my god,
Sunday.
Well, that's why I love you. That's why I appreciate you. That's why we're a good partnership. So I get it. We did miss you, Kendall.
Yeah.
But you're going to be able to enjoy this listening as an audience member. So we want you back ASAP, but we hope
Fix
you
that
enjoy
tooth.
this. Yes, get those teeth pulled, get yourself some narcotics and White Claw.
Oh yeah.
A Guy Fieri marathon, and you're going to be all good. Well, there was a bunch of things, of course, going on that we wanted to talk about, but I think we are tapped, and we hit the majors that we wanted to have Antonio's expertise on. So with that said, unless you have anything else, I think I'm ready to wrap this show.
I mean, I just one quick plug on our
Please.
Redbubble store. We've got masks, baby. Hoops Talk masks. So
Hoops.
2 birds with 1 stone. Stay
There
safe.
you go.
And promote. You know what I'm saying?
I know, right? Safely promote us.
Yeah. Well, I bought some, so when they come in, photo shoot.
Oh yes, I can't wait. Okay, I have to buy some. Okay, so that's on Redbubble.
You get a discount for buying 3 or more or 4 or more. So
there you go.
FYI.
You got 3 or 4 more faces that need to be covered. So just buy bulk, baby, buy bulk. We have a link actually to our Redbubble on our profiles on all of our social accounts. So you can find it there. I did the link tree again so that we can have like a bunch. So because I'm like in that, you know me, I'm tweaking everything.
The zone.
I'm in the zone, you know me. Well, besides that, we just want to say thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe and review. And we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on everywhere you enjoy your podcasts. We also make sure, the Good News Radio app, you can download that, listen to us at 6:30. We're on social. We're very active on social. We're like really going to town on social. I mean,
We're sitting at
Twitter.
home, you know.
I know, right? We've given up on seasons. We were just like, let's just tweet. So we're on Twitter and Instagram at The Hoops Talking, YouTube, subscribe. You want to see the premieres as they're coming out. We're on the TikTok at The Hoops Talk Podcast. You know, I think let me do our little music here, and we hope that you enjoyed. Karen, how do we want to keep it?
Sweaty.